George Pickens might not step foot on that practice field Monday morning. Caleb Downs is about to announce himself to the entire NFL. And there are roster battles quietly brewing beneath the surface that could completely reshape this Cowboys roster before a single preseason snap is ever taken. The OTA era has arrived in Dallas, and there is more riding on these next few weeks than most people are giving credit for. Buckle up, because this is everything you need to know, and everything you need to watch, heading into Cowboys OTAs. If this kind of deep Cowboys coverage is what you live for, do us a quick favor right now, hit that like button, share this video with every Cowboys fan you know, and subscribe so you never miss a single update, breakdown, or take all off season long. This community keeps growing and every single one of you is the reason why. Now let's get into it. Let's start with the question that has consumed Cowboys Nation for weeks. George Pickens. Is he going to walk through that door Monday when OTAs officially get going? Let's be completely honest with each other here. If you are being realistic, if you are looking at this situation without the rose-colored glasses, the answer is almost certainly no. And here is the thing, nobody who has paid close attention to how this offseason has unfolded should be the slightest bit surprised by that answer. Think about what has already happened. George Pickens came to Dallas with enormous expectations. He wanted to be paid like a number one receiver. He wanted an extension that reflected his belief in his own talent and his own market value. The Cowboys did not give him that extension. They held firm. And from that moment forward, Pickens has been sending a very clear, very calculated message by staying away from the voluntary portions of this off-season program. He has been absent through all of Phase 1. He has been absent through all of Phase 2. And the word to focus on, the word that is the entire key to understanding this situation, is voluntary. That word matters enormously. Everything until June 16th, when mandatory minicamp kicks off, is completely voluntary. No player is required to be there. No agent worth his commission is going to advise his client to show up to voluntary workouts when that client is actively seeking leverage in a contract negotiation. That is simply not how the NFL operates. That is not how any of this works. Now here is where it gets interesting. If George Pickens walks onto that practice field Monday morning, you can take every single trade rumor, every disgruntlement narrative, every national headline about his relationship with the organization, and throw all of it directly in the trash. His presence would be a thunderous signal that everything is fine. That he is locked in. That he is a Cowboy and ready to prove it. But that scenario feels unlikely. The expectation, the educated guess, is that he sits out OTAs and shows up when he is legally obligated to appear in June. Mandatory minicamp is where things get real. That is where fines begin for absent players, and no agent, especially not one managing a player who has already made a public statement through his absence, is going to let his guy sit out mandatory camp and absorb fines. That would be a miscalculation of the highest order. So right now, the prediction is that Pickens misses OTAs, reports for mandatory minicamp, and the situation gradually de-escalates from there. But we will know something very telling very early Monday morning. Drop your prediction in the comments right now, why if you think Pickens shows up, and if you think he stays away. Let's see what this community thinks. Beyond the Pickens storyline, the second thing to track carefully is who else is missing when the full roster comes together. Donovan Wilson is not going to be a factor during this phase. He had hip surgery in the off-season and is on a timeline that has him targeting training camp as his return point. So do not expect to see him doing anything meaningful or competitive during OTAs. That is completely fine and completely expected. But here is where it gets more nuanced and more important. What about the names nobody is talking about? The players whose injuries or surgeries have not been made public yet. OTAs have a way of revealing those kinds of things very quickly, because when a player who was expected to be full go suddenly is not practicing, the questions start immediately. How is Darren Bland's recovery coming along after his own off-season procedure? Is he moving freely? Does he look like himself? These are the details that separate truly informed Cowboys fans from the casual observers, and the next few days are going to start providing real answers. Now let's shift to the player who might represent the single most exciting storyline coming out of this entire offseason, Caleb Downs. We are finally, after months of waiting and months of building anticipation, about to actually see this man play football in a Cowboys uniform. And the excitement around what he brings to this defense is genuinely difficult to overstate. He will be wearing number 13 heading into these OTAs. The number 2 jersey dream has been slowly fading, but honestly, once you see what Caleb Downs is capable of doing on a football field, the jersey number becomes completely irrelevant. What the entire fanbase wants to know right now is where exactly he lines up and what his role looks like in this defense. Here is the expectation. When the Cowboys are in their base package, for defensive backs on the field, there is absolutely no logical reason Caleb Downs should not be in that lineup and contributing immediately. He is better than the alternatives. Period. When the defense shifts into their nickel package, he slides into that nickel spot, but this is where understanding the nuance of what they are asking him to do becomes critical. Caleb Downs is a nickel defensive back. He is not a traditional nickel corner. That distinction is massive. Nobody is asking this young man to line up in press man coverage every single play against the shiftiest, quickest slot receivers in the NFL. That would be setting him up to fail in a way that serves nobody. What they are asking him to do is play within a system that features a lot of zone coverage, that leverages his instincts and his range and his ability to read plays before they develop. He will draw tight end matchups. He will get some man coverage reps, but his game is built on intelligence, on being in the right place at the right time, on making plays that other players at his position simply cannot make because they do not process the game the way he does. Think about how the very best safety-nickel hybrid players in the league have built their careers. None of them were thrown into impossible island coverage situations every week as rookies. They were deployed intelligently, and their talent was allowed to flourish within a structure that made sense. That is exactly what this coaching staff should be doing with Caleb Downs, and every indication suggests that is precisely the plan. The honest truth is that the excitement level around this young player has not been felt in Dallas since CeeDee Lamb was walking off the draft board. That is not hyperbole. That is a real reflection of just how much this fanbase believes in what Caleb Downs can become. And OTAs are the first real glimpse. Soak in every single clip you can find. Now let's talk about the roster battles, because there are several genuinely compelling competitions taking shape across multiple positions. Nothing is going to be decided in these early OTA sessions. Anyone who tells you otherwise does not understand how the NFL offseason works. But what you can learn from watching carefully is who moves with confidence, who has the early edge, and who is going to be pushing for a role as training camp approaches. At quarterback, the battle behind the starter between Sam Howell and Joe Milton is wide open. You might not get much from watching the reps themselves this early, but pay attention to the rhythm, to who looks like they belong, to who is commanding the huddle like they own it. At running back, the competition for the second and third spots is genuinely interesting. Malik Davis, Jaydon Blue, and Phil Mafah are all in the mix, and Jaydon Blue in particular has something significant to prove after a slow start to his time with this organization. A strong spring could completely change the conversation around his role going forward. At tight end, watch whether Brevin Spanford can take a meaningful step forward and challenge Luke Schoonmaker for that second tight end role. If that competition tips in Spanford's favor, it opens up a very complicated conversation about Schoonmaker's future on this roster and whether a trade or a release becomes something the front office has to seriously consider. At wide receiver, your top 4 are essentially locked in. But wide receiver 5 and 6? Completely up for grabs, and the competition for those spots is going to be fierce. With George Pickens likely absent, every single rep that would have gone to the third receiver spot is now available to a player trying to earn a role and a future on this team. Jonathan Mingo is one of the names to watch most closely. Recent workout footage actually showed Mingo out there running with the starting unit when Pickens was not present. Is he quietly becoming the legitimate wide receiver 4 on this roster? That is a massive development if it holds through the spring and into training camp, and OTAs are going to start telling us whether this is real or just a byproduct of who was and was not in attendance. Tanner Hudson is a fan favorite and somebody people are genuinely rooting for, but this is also the cold reality check moment. The path to a roster spot is extremely difficult for players in his position, and OTAs will reveal very quickly where he actually stands. Michael Trigg is another name that generates real excitement, and rightfully so. The talent is obvious and undeniable. But the NFL is about much more than talent alone, and OTAs will start showing whether he has made the mental and instinctual strides that will determine his long-term role. Question of the day: which single position battle are you most fired up to follow throughout OTAs and training camp? Drop your answer in the comments section below. Let's see where the real debate is in this community. On the defensive side of the ball, there are several compelling storylines developing simultaneously. Sam Williams is going to have his work cut out for him. He received significant guaranteed money relative to his contract, which should provide him some cushion, but the pressure to perform and justify that investment is real. Can pass rushers like James Houston push him and make this a genuine competition? That battle is worth monitoring closely. At linebacker, the top two spots look relatively settled, but the competition for that third linebacker role, whether it goes to players like Bearer or young athletic talents like Shamar James, is legitimately open and will develop throughout the spring. The cornerback room is where things get truly fascinating. Darren Bland is expected to be a starter, but his health and how he looks coming off his off-season procedure matters enormously. Beyond Bland, the competition features Savion Revel, Cobie Durant, Devin Moore, Kalen Carson, Dariush Kendrick, and Josh Butler all fighting and clawing for their futures on this roster. Revel in particular is a name to watch with genuine attention. The athleticism has always been there. The question has always been whether the health and the consistency would allow the talent to actually show up on the field. OTAs are the beginning of that answer. At safety, the battle between Wanya Thomas and PJ Locke carries some real intrigue. The guaranteed money leans slightly in Thomas's favor, but this coaching staff has a clear history with Locke and a clear philosophy for how they want to deploy him. Do not assume the depth chart is already written at that position, because it is not. And then there is Quinton Bohanna, working without guaranteed money remaining, needing to show the coaching staff that he is worth keeping around. His three-technique work on the interior defensive line will be under a genuine microscope. Rashawn Gary as one of the premier new additions to this defense is somebody who could make an immediate and significant impact. And Malachi Cornelius Lawrence, one of the more intriguing developmental players on this roster, is someone to watch as he begins earning his stripes and working his way up the depth chart past veterans who were already here. OTAs are not the Super Bowl. Nothing that happens this week decides anything permanently. But what these sessions do, what they have always done, is begin revealing the truth about this roster. They tell you which players have put in the work. They tell you who is ready to compete. They tell you which storylines are about to become the dominant conversations heading into training camp. The Cowboys are finally moving. The questions that have been building all off-season long are about to start getting answered. And the next few weeks are going to be must-watch for every single person who bleeds that blue and silver. Stay locked in. This is just getting started.